What's going on, guys? SasDood here. You can just call me Sas. I hope everyone is having a very good day, very good February. Um, Today, I have, as usual, it's the 4 year, actually, it's the year anniversary of my art. Every February, I like to update people on my art journey, what I think about my art, my feelings on art, and every year I just like to be transparent with people and to showcase some fears, some negativity, some positivity to how my progress has been. Now, uh, next month I'll do my channel update. I have a lot of things to say about my channel update, and I have a lot of things to say about my art channel update. Did I say next year? I said next month in March. So, I just want to talk about certain things and that I feel like when it comes to my art. First, I want to focus on the negativity, and that is right now, I've gone through a lot of periods of burnout, and that's kind of related to drawing for 4 years without any major breaks. I'd like to talk about switching from digital to traditional, my lack of art style, etc., etc. So, first off, let's talk about my burnout. Burnout has been very big for me recently and in the past couple of years because I'm a very like results driven type of person. Um I like to see my progress being made, and without any progress being made or without any progress to analyze, I get very much burnt out on it, and not taking breaks has also really burned me out. Right now, I'm kind of slowing down on drawing right now. But the burnout, it comes and goes when it comes to art. But the main thing is my burnout comes from not really looking at any sort of progress per se, because I rely a lot on like 3D models and tracing, and when I'm not doing that, I like to heavily reference the image by lining up the facial features and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Art is art. You can create it how you want to. I've always been transparent about how I make my art and how I make excuse me, my content. But um I touched upon this in one of my newer videos where I kind of focused way too much on uh analyzing, because from my third year going to my fourth year, I did a whole year of analyzing. It was like an hour long video, and I did improve a lot, but at the same time, now when I just sit down and draw, it kind of feels like I really learned nothing at all. And I think that's because art as a skill is not something you just master in 3 or 4 years. It's something you master after a decade or even more. You're not going to be a master guitarist even after 5 years. You can always learn new things. You can always come up with new scenarios and different ways to play the chords for a guitar and things like that. And all art, whether it's music, whether it's sculpting or crafting or drawing, is the same way. And I feel like I've been pretty harsh on myself when it comes to that. And I recently kind of just opened my eyes to that. I uploaded a art talk recently, which I haven't done in a while, talking about how Raphael said it took me 4 years to paint like, or Pablo Picasso, I mean, it took me 4 years to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child. And I've kind of opened my eyes to that kind of topic recently, where I just sat down and drew just recently as well, not just for that video, but just recently. And I've just been having a lot more fun, and I feel like I need to be a little bit more easy on myself. I don't really have a time limit, right, on what I want to accomplish, so I can just take it easy. Not that there needs to be a time limit, anyways. It's like I have to become famous in 5 years or whatever, which I did think, which was my primary goal in the first couple of years, but I kind of shed that goal as I realized how deep drawing was, how deep any art is. But I've very recently started to become easier on myself and become very analytical about my drawings. But at the same time, I also need to learn that sometimes you don't need to analyze that thing. Sometimes you just need to draw, you need to like create, and you need to let go of what you think is good in your head or what audience think is good. You need to kind of let go of that peer pressure from yourself and from others in order to create what you want to create. And I've learned that lesson hard going into my fourth year, or going into my fifth year, I guess, because I just completed 4 years of drawing. So I'll be going into my fifth year. Enough about that. I do have a video on that if you a separate art talk if you want to listen to me talk about that a little bit more. I want to talk about switching from digital traditional and my lack of art style. And so going from my into my third year, I switched from digital traditional. I used to draw with a pen display tablet, a Gaumon PD156 Pro, and now I just draw on printer paper, and I use cheap mechanical pencils to draw. And I feel like that's really contributed to, excuse me, my art style overall and how I like to draw. I never really gelled well with digital. I was very money scarce at the time. I used practically a lot of my tax return when I quit my job and to, buy that pen display tablet. It was like $250, and to buy and try out different types of software. And I never really gelled with it. I really always tried to do like a simple approach to digital drawing using a sketchbook, Autodesk Sketchbook. And I never really understood any of like the tools or the features and how to properly use digital drawing. And I felt like it always really held me back. So I decided to switch to traditional going into my third year. And I feel like that has immensely helped because I'm feeling the paper, I'm feeling the pencil, I'm feeling the lead, I'm feeling the graphite, and it's more of a real experience than digital is. Digital will never replace traditional drawing because it's a real like paper, it's a real material, it's a real pencil. You can smudge your fingers on it, you can crumple up your paper and tear it out and throw it away, and you can't do that with digital. And I feel like it contributes to a more sense of realism and more sense of like grounding in reality than digital will ever be. Now, I don't mean to dissuade people from trying digital. I feel like digital is a very good way to like kind of test out drawing, especially if you already own some type of tablet, like an iPad or something like that. You can use Procreate and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with like switching from digital, traditional, traditional, digital. I just took the awkward path. Most people switch from traditional to go to digital. I went from digital to traditional, so I had to find a lot of things differently, and I had to approach things differently, like pen pressure and shading, and I had to relearn everything I knew about drawing, basically, when you switch from the opposite way around, because I guess you could say for both sides, if you switch from one side to the other and the other side to the original side, I feel like it's different. But I feel like if you switch from traditional to digital, you already kind of know what things look like and how they feel on paper, so you should know how they work on a digital software, like Krita or whatever. But you don't really get that experience if you switch from traditional to or from digital to traditional, right? And I feel like my art has exploded, 1 million times more switching to traditional, even with I have all these pencils and pens. I have all these different sorts of like lead. I've had to spend a lot of money, not a whole lot of money, but quite a bit of money buying different types of leads and lead grades and messing with different types of like, cheap mechanicals and mechanical sets, some of which I've done reviews on in order to figure out what I like and dislike. And I've found out that I like mechanicals and I like shading with mechanicals. I like cross hatching with mechanicals. I don't necessarily like doing the typical shading method anymore, where you just double the side of the pen. I don't really want to do that anymore. I feel like it's not very entertaining for me, and it doesn't really feel the same as when I hatch and cross hatch and do other things like stippling or scribbling and things like that, right? I feel like it's more of a harder format to like get right. And I'm not trying to go for ultra realism or whatever in most of my drawings. And I still want some of that cartoony elements in there. So I feel like I've really kind of narrowed down what I want to do with traditional. Excuse me. Speaking of what I want to do with art styles, I've never really had an art style. Um, I really wanted to emulate like Takehito Harada's like anime style, but I've really found out that I don't like drawing uh, anime at all. I don't really like drawing super cartoony stuff like anime. I prefer more like Western animation and designs rather than your typical uh, anime style. Not that Takehito Harada's anime style is typical. It's nothing but it's one of the most unique art styles out there in a sea of just non-unique, plain Jane anime styles. You know, with shading and stuff like that. But I really found out I don't like that type of style. But I do prefer more Western animation and Western drawings. I just prefer Western stuff overall, and I feel like it would be the same if I was like a Japanese person or whatever, and I was born in Japan. I would prefer anime, but um, I have been trying to figure out my art style, and like I said, I've recently uh really liked doing cross hatching, and stippling, scribbling, things like that with pencil, with different types of lead grades and things like that. I really tried to push hard onto the shading with the graphite side, dulling the blunt side, and I never really. I feel like it hurt my art more than it did help it with all the blending and stuff like that because I spent my entire 3 years of studies just studying cross hatching and hatching, and not doing the regular shading, with the graphite. So I feel like it hurt my art more than it did help it, and I made a lot of terrible drawings because of it. But because of those terrible drawings, I was able to figure out what I wanted to do. And just recently, I wanted to. Uh, I've recently started playing, Clash of Clans and Clash Royale and Boom Beach again, and I really love the Clashorama art style. It's very Western focused. It's very Futurama Simpsons type of character design and coloring and shading and things like that. And so I think what I want to do is um like really lean into the Clashorama art style uh with the noses and the shield face. They call the noses like I don't know, they call them penis noses, I guess, because it's got the two circles and then they just go straight up. There's really no definition. And I kind of find that really funny. I just like the way it looks, and I like how the body proportions are so out of whack, especially for like the barbarians. And I just like the different character designs and how they tackle different like creatures and things like that. I'm not a big creature designer. I think I'll just stick with just normal, regular human designs. But I would like to take a shot at studying those types of designs from the Clashorama creators and seeing if I can kind of mix some things of my own style when it comes to like cross hatching and hatching and outlines and things like that, line weight, and see what I can get out of it. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the past couple weeks or so, is just experimenting and things like that. Now moving on to uh what I want to say is aphantasia. If you don't know what aphantasia is, it's difficulty in imagining and visualizing things. I feel like I suffer from aphantasia from for like a certain degree because I find it very hard in my head to visualize things. Like you can tell me to rotate an apple in my head, and I can rotate an apple in my head, but it's always very vague and it's always very blurry to me. And it doesn't matter how many times I study something or whether I, put a lot of effort into something. I feel like I'm always grasping at some sort of like vague mist in my head that I can't really visualize. And I feel like this is very apparent when I'm reading. When I read, like I've been reading my Mortal Kombat 1, the movie, the original movie novelization, and I'm reading, and it's just nothing's coming to my head. Uh, an author has to really, really describe things thoroughly for me to understand it, and they have to really put in the work for me to understand what's happening with the environment and the stories and things like that. But when an author tells me like a mountain range or like a jewel was glistening or something like that, I can visualize that in my head, but it's just very, very difficult. And as a result, I have to work harder at reading and I have to work harder at visualizing the particular scene to the point where sometimes I will reread the same couple of pages over and over and over again. Sorry about that. Um, I have to reread the same pages over and over and over again to even understand what's happening or to really understand what the author is trying to say in a particular scene. And I feel like I suffer from aphantasia as a result. And because of that, I have to rely on a lot of 3D modeling, a lot of tracing when it comes to like the heavier projects and things like that. And overall, just very heavy referencing, which leads to me feeling very uncreative. And, social media and stuff like that plays a part too. But on is not as much. I try to, stay out of my own head when it comes to that type of stuff. But it feels very hard trying to be a creative when you uh, when you try to have fun with drawing and it kind of just leads to you doing the same things over and over and over again, and you don't really get much results. And that kind of ties into kind of the burnout I've been feeling and the 4 years and feeling like there's no progress, which isn't true. It just feels like that. I don't have like an official diagnosis or whatever, but I, even after studying for 3 years in art and things like that, or 4 years in art, I believe, um, I just find it very difficult to visualize things. Even when I have the actual image in my head, and I have the references there, and I have lots of tools available to help me, and things that I've studied, for hundreds, if not thousands of hours, I still have trouble of visualizing and understanding what I want to do. I always have the vague sense, but I need certain third party tools to help me, whether it's, you know, when I 3D model, I don't explicitly just take other people's poses and things like that. I make my own up. I think of like the vague pose in my head and then I go on Pinterest and look it up. And then I would, pose the character myself. Um, and when it comes to tracing, sometimes I'll just trace the entire image and there's nothing wrong with that. I find a lot of people, like especially colorists, who don't really care about drawing. They want to show off their coloring skills. They'll trace over the entire drawing and then they'll make up their own colors and they'll color they'll color the art in a way that they like and the way that they do it very uniquely. I've been trying to move away from using a lot more guidelines and things like that. I'm trying to draw a little bit more looser. Of course, I still reference things heavily, but I still I still want to kind of break away from that, even with my so-called aphantasia or just lack of visualization. I want to enhance my skills to the point where I no longer need to rely as much and I can perhaps not visualize still as clearly, which there you can work on that, but I feel like it's just uh, a negative trait that I have. But more so, um, instead of relying purely on references or just not on measuring and things like that, being pixel perfect about everything to where I have to worry about, is this eye okay? Is this level? Is this whatever? I want to focus on how do I say this? More loose drawings, and I've been practicing that recently. So I want to do more gesture drawing, and I want to kind of just tackle things and fail over and over and over again, uh, in order to feel a little bit looser in my art and feel, that energy that everyone always talks about when drawing. I never really understood that when I'm listening to like a study or I'm listening to like someone talk about art. They talk about the energy, and I don't feel any energy when I draw, even when I'm not referencing and even when I'm not, guidelines, using guidelines and things like that. But I feel like I need to find my own sort of energy and my own sort of like looseness. So that's what I've been working on recently. I also want to talk about going on to the last topic for negativity. I know it's going to be a very long video. I'm sorry, but railroading myself into art without a plan or a job and hedging my bets on art. I've been unemployed for a while. It's been 3 or 4 years since I last worked, and I put all my time, effort, soul, blood, sweat, tears, whatever you want to say. I hate when people say that, but I really, I really did put a lot of my time and energy into drawing. And when I first started drawing, I really wanted to, make some money out of it. I really wanted to make a living out of it. And slowly I realized that that wasn't going to be a thing. I was not skilled enough. The art skill is too deep and too complex to fathom within the first couple of years, anyways. And I feel like I screwed myself over by going head first into studying art and drawing without really learning why people draw or why people be creative. And I think that was my problem for the longest time up until, going into my 4th year where I started to take it easier and started to relax a little bit more. And I want to say to people who are trying to do that, like, you need to chill out. You need to relax. Art is not a race. Art is not a contest. Um, I have been applying for jobs and things like that recently, so I kind of want to balance working and drawing slash playing my guitar and lots of other things alongside art. I don't want art to just be the one thing that I'm good at, or even I'm not gonna even say good. I don't want to be art to be the one thing that I'm mediocre at. I don't really want to be. Maybe I do. I'm not sure. I think it's better to be a jack of all trades than to be a master of one. Um, because you have a lot more opportunities that way. So railroading myself didn't really help me. So right now, going into my 5th year, I'm uh, differentiating myself in doing different types of things. I'm playing the guitar like I do on the channel. I'm uploading some gameplay videos. I'm uh, gaming just a little bit more in general to take my mind off things, of art and life. Um, I write scripts. I script on my videos. I do editing. I I draw, 3D pose. I like posing 3D models and things like that. So I've been kind of differentiating myself out there, trying not to railroad myself as I go into my later years as a person, because I'm 25 right now. I'm 26 this year, so I kind of want to have a lot of things going on at the same time, so I never feel bored, and I can, if I have struggles in one thing, then I can move on to the next thing, right? So if I ever want to walk away from art for a month, 2 months, 3 months, or if I want to just stop drawing entirely, I have something else to fall back on that I can practice, right? Moving on to more positive things. I know I just took 30 minutes to basically 30 minutes to talk about negativity, just a negative party, but I want to do some more positive things here. And just to tell you, there's no script going on. I feel like if I had a script, this video would be way shorter, but I feel like it'd be less genuine, and that um, I want to just get my thoughts out there. I do have a bullet point list I have up on the screen in front of me that I'm looking at to like help remind me to keep on track and stuff like that. But this is not scripted at all, and I just my thoughts off the top of my dome, right? Um, Focusing on the more positive side, I want to talk about touching on the topics of me not being creative. I personally think there is creativity and originality in relying on others' creativity and originality. And as a topic I want to make a certain video on. And what I mean by that is you creativity doesn't just come from you sitting at home, laying in bed, or you at work and you're thinking, right? Sometimes you are inspired to create by someone else's creation. And this was a topic I've seen being discussed heavily, especially amongst, the younger generation, when it comes to copying and tracing and just quote unquote no originality when it comes to drawing, particularly among those who like to draw manga or anime type of things, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's fine for people to do. I have no problems with that. And a lot of people, a lot of younger people have an issue with younger artists or newer artists just copying what they see and doing it like they draw like a manga panel of like Naruto or Bleach or Hajime no Ippo or something like that, and then you go in the comment section, everyone is like praising the guy, but at the same time you always have a couple of comments like this is not an original drawing. The true goal of drawing is to be original and creative, as if art is literally like art needs to be an original thought, and that you need to do everything possible to not use references or to be in like you can't be inspired by somebody else, which I think is a bunch of baloney. A lot of artists, especially when they're starting out, they will copy manga panels. I've done it. Um, and they will, draw what they think is cool because they want to be like, they want to emulate to be like their favorite artist or person or role model. And I think that's flattering, right? And they don't do it to to take money from other artists or to, take a market share or whatever stupid reasons. But I think that there is originality in riffing off someone else's originality, right? You can take a manga panel from an artist, or you can take a picture of like a drawing or like a flower that someone else drew, and you can draw it the exact same way. But the originality comes from how you approach, the final product. You can have the same shapes and proportions and things like that, but maybe you change how you shade it or how maybe you color it. And obviously, this goes into more like whether it's fan art or whether it's you stealing from the artist, whatever. Um, but as long as you credit the original artist, or as long as you make it obvious that you are not the original artist of the art piece that you're working on or copying from or tracing from, I think it's entirely okay. Um, Maybe the artist that's being taken from might feel differently, in which case I suggest them to have a more open mind when it comes to art. Um, but you can't really tell someone what to think or what to change when it comes to that type of stuff. I'd be flattered, and I would be amazed if someone, if someone like, for instance, if I created my original Conan Exiles character, my She Barbarian or my Witch Child, or I'm working on a new character right now, where someone takes that and then draws it in like a different style, or takes the idea and makes their own idea off it, I'd be flattered. I'd be, grateful. I'd be like, that's crazy. I inspired you. And I feel like uh, originality is not the goal with art. And being creative, while it is a byproduct of creating, it not necessarily is a, requirement for drawing. There are a lot of non-creative artists and non-creative fields and things like that. For instance, like if you're a portrait artist, you obviously have taken years of your life to learn anatomy and 3D space and shapes and things like that. Are we gonna call portrait artists not creative because all they do is copy? They copy the person. They don't have any creative thought process. They draw the person entirely realistically, true to every uh, you know, sense of the picture that the artist is looking at or the person that he's looking at. No, we don't say that. It's a very common argument, I feel, and just wanted to touch upon that. I don't want to go too deep in on. I'll make a video on it separately sometime soon. Um, I've also been doing a little bit of 3D posing. I would like to say 3D modeling, but I'm not actually learning how to model. I feel like 3D posing, using things like Pose My Art, or I use XNA LoRa. I use uh, SFM like Gmod. I use there's various posing websites and apps and things like that. I like to pose them. I like to think of a pose in my head, and then I like to go on Pinterest and look for a pose like that, and then I like to model whatever character I have. So if it's like a Crash Bandicoot character, if it's a, I don't know, superhero or things like that, I like to pose it. And obviously, you know, I want to thank the creative community for allowing me to, download the models and pose them and things like that. Whether it's for SFW or NSFW art, it's fine. Some artists, they'll tell you what to do and what not to do with their models, which is fine. But I want to kind of throw that out there. I do use 3D models. I do use 3D modeling apps and websites and things like that. And it's not a lot of newer generation people do that. A lot of the old greats would use various tools as well to help them draw. Not that it diminishes their skill, but just a thought there. I had something about talking about my Conan Exiles original characters, but I think I'll make that a separate video. I've already talked about my experience with blending pen and ink with graphite, or actually yeah. There's not really much to say about that. I like the cross hatching and hatching of pen and ink, but I don't necessarily like the no errors and kind of messy look when a line is not straight and things like that. So I've been experimenting with different lead sizes and grades to achieve certain types of darknesses and certain different types of techniques when it comes to mechanical pencils and such. I've talked about taking art a little less seriously. Like I said, I want to draw more cartoony art styles, like the Clashorama art style designs. I kind of want to maybe delve into maybe more different topics of art, like drawing animals. Like I feel like drawing birds would be simple. I kind of took a gander at drawing like cats and dogs and stuff like that, but I always messed it up. I'm not very good at drawing animals. I don't really care about animals, to be honest, about drawing them. I don't have any pets or whatever, so I don't really care about drawing animals. I really like drawing humans. I like drawing the characters because they have so much personality, from the media I consume. But I think maybe like starting with birds would be a good idea. I do want to do more gesture drawing. I haven't started yet. I've kind of been busy with life and running the YouTube channel. But I do want to do more gesture drawing. I want to do more experimenting with art styles. I've been playing the guitar. I'm learning how to play the guitar. I picked up guitar almost a year ago. And then I learned it for the first month or so and I dropped it, but I've picked it back up recently. Just learning the basic chords and, one chord songs or one line songs, whatever you want to call it. I picked up model posing and looking at, lots of Pinterest images and posing those models. That pretty much wraps it up. I've already talked about taking a less realistic stance of art, more cartoony art styles, the Classroom art styles, and wanting to emulate that with my mechanical pencil. So I think I'm going to wrap up this video. We're at 35 minutes right now looking at my OBS. The wrap up is I want to do more gesture drawings. I maybe want to do more like different types of topics. Maybe I want to go into doing buildings, like medieval buildings and stuff like that. I'm really interested in medieval, like weapons and buildings, and I did study that a little bit. Maybe drawing animals such as birds. I want to be looser with my art, which I think gesture drawing will be good at because I feel like I've done better without guidelines recently than I have with guidelines. Just being looser by how I hold my mechanical and how I approach art as well. I want to adopt kind of that Clashorama art style. I want to try to be more free flowing and creative. I apologize. I do want to just in general be more open to art and be less restrictive and be less analytical about how seriously I'm taking my art, because I did a whole year of just analyzing and trying to improve over and over again, and it really burnt me out, and it really did just destroy my mindset. And sometimes after you destroy something, you got to destroy something to rebuild it up again. So right now going into my 5th year, I have destroyed like my preconceived notions of art in myself, and I kind of want to build it back up little by little at a time, while also diversifying my skill set when it comes to other things. I've been trying to experiment with my thumbnails a little bit. I'm not trying to be clickbaity, but I'm trying to be a little bit more funny when it comes to like my gaming thumbnails and stuff like that. Just a new year, you know, a new me when it comes to the art channel, and I've already kind of started going into that more and more. Even though we're so early onto the year, I tend to fully embrace that. And it doesn't really matter whether I'm going fast or slow, as long as I'm still drawing and as long as I'm still trying to, you know, get to that end all be all goal of being a little bit more loose, a little bit less restrictive on myself, less use of 3D models and tracing and things like that, I think would be good. Although I still will rely on them due to my lack of visualization. I think it'd be good to feel that energy, feel that flow that everyone is talking about when it comes to art. And that's going to be it, guys. That's going to be it for the video. Every year I make this type of video. Next month, like I said, will be the channel update. I have a lot to talk about with the channel update. I did make this video quite a bit late into the month because I originally intended my 1 year in review to be my kind of art review that I do every year. But then I realized that I just needed to be more transparent and I needed to be more I needed to talk more about it than just having it be in an hour-long video of me looking at my drawings and saying, you know, this or that or this or that. So if you have the attention span and you made it this far to the end of the video, thank you. I really appreciate everyone who likes and comments on my drawings, who dislikes and, you know, who comments hateful things on my drawings. I appreciate it. I will post more art. I will, you know, draw more. And that's gonna be it, guys. I really have nothing else to say. I've talked myself out. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If you wish to support me, my videos, and my artwork, payment and / tipping links will be in the description. More videos, more artworks will come regardless. Stay tuned for the rest of the year, guys, when it comes to the art, because I have a lot more things planned. I want to draw a lot more things, and I want to do a lot more when it comes to art. So, thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Goodbye for now.